I really wish I could give you guys a rundown of every single thing I saw in the PlayStation Showcase, but let's be honest, there's a lot of stuff in there that nobody's going to care about. There was some stuff that definitely wowed me. There was some stuff in there that made me go, huh? And there was some stuff that I think everybody knew was coming. Um, Overall, I thought it was a good showcase. I don't think it was the best one ever. I didn't even realize, honestly, until about halfway through that I was like, oh, this must be their E3 this year. And I'm kind of ashamed of myself because I'm a pretty hyper focused video game dude. I think because I saw so much news about the PlayStation VR, and I thought this was more of like a VR showcase. I was totally wrong, which made it all the more exciting when it kept going and going and going and going. Here, I thought it was going to be like a 15 or 20 minute thing. It ran about an hour and 15 minutes. I do recommend, if you are a Sony fan, to watch it. I will say that it did a great job of keeping us Sony ponies proud of the Sony brand. Did it win anybody new? Probably not. And as always, there's going to be Monday morning quarterbacks talking about how great or how horrible that it was. Interesting timing that it comes out after Breath of the Wild, arguably the game of the year. It has some pretty big shoes to fill. And speaking of Phil, I wonder what Phil Spencer is thinking as he's watching this, because that all the people at Xbox were watching this, trying to shape it up to their showcase, which we're going to get to talk about here after it debuts in, I think it's another week or two. Anyway, here we go. So I'm looking at this blog post here. I'm just going to scroll through stuff that catches my eye, of stuff that I can oh yeah, I remember talking about that. I'll say holistically, as I said, it was okay. The one that got me excited very early was Helldivers 2, which I absolutely adored the first Helldivers. It was such a quirky top-down shooter that was very in the Starship Troopers universe vibe. I played a ton of it with my friend Sid. The missions got harder and harder and harder, and it kind of took away a little of the charm of the kind of shooter element, and it got much more strategy-based. And ultimately, I think it got just to a point where it was too challenging and just not as fun anymore, so I put it away. The fact that they're bringing out Helldivers 2 is awesome. The fact that they're continuing the same kind of tongue-in-cheek, service guaranteed citizenship, spread democracy. It has vibes of all of that nonsense wrapped into it, but it looks like it's going to be a nice third-person shooter this time, not a top-down isometric view, with a lot better graphics. And I hope that they can find a good marrying between the over-the-top nonsense of the story of the original Helldivers and find a way to kind of soup it up with a little bit better graphics. Obviously, it looked good, didn't look great, and I'll be curious to see if they are doing more like Monster Hunter vibes, or it's going to be more like run-based where you're kind of expected to die. That's kind of how the first one went. So it remains to be seen on Helldivers 2. There was a lot of weird JRPG-esque type of games that came out. I know that JRPGs thrive on the Nintendo Switch and on the PlayStation 4/5. We saw a lot of those today. So those traditional JRPG elements where characters are talking and they have these larger-than-life robots or weapons or guns, and they're quoting these kind of nonsensical things like, "It's my fate," or "I must save the universe." And it's just like, wait, what's going on? I saw a lot of that. And I'm going to gloss over those because they didn't really wow me, and I don't feel like they stood out in the crowd as much as they should have. At times, this showcase felt like a premium PlayStation showcase. It showed off things that really impressed me, high polish, very clean, nice, tight trailers. At times, it felt like what we were watching was during COVID again, where you had all of these indie jam sessions and all of these nonsensical gamer showcases all wedged together that all kind of just blurred together, and it was very confusing. One thing I will say, as I'm kind of scrolling through here trying to find stuff that made me excited at least, was that they didn't get into any stuff with the developers. This was purely trailers. You'd see the name of the studio, you'd see the game, next. It wasn't broken up by somebody coming out going, "Well, hello there, my name's Jim, and I worked on this game, and it means a lot to me, and here's my wife, and the inspiration was my dog," and blah, blah. We didn't get any of that, and I'm glad. It kept the pace going. One game that stands out as I'm looking at it now is Foam Stars, which started off like a really cool Square Enix trailer, looked like it was taking place in some futuristic city, and my mind starts racing. I'm like, is this going to be something with like Midgar? Are we going to get a tie into Final Fantasy? Are we going to get something exciting and new in a fun Final Fantasy-esque universe? No. We're going to get a game called Foam Stars, which looks like a 3v3 hero shooter / Splatoon type game, which just looks bonkers, and I suspect it'll be dead on arrival in about 3 months. I don't understand why everybody insists in this hero shooter 3v3 battle royale, arena royale type game. Square Enix is now throwing their name into the hat after so many other failed experiments in this. As much as I love Square Enix, as much as I love their rich character design and their over-the-top commitment to some really bold, ambitious ideas, this ain't it. One that really excited me was Metal Gear Solid 3, which I never played Snake Eater. And I'm watching the trailer, and it's showing a lizard, and it's showing a bird, and it's showing a snake, and I'm like, where is this going? Like, what's the next apex predator that's going to attack? You know, you see a little ant, and then you see like a bird eating an ant, and then you see like a bigger bird eating a bird, and then an alligator, and I'm like, okay, what's going to be the top of the food chain? It's Solid Snake. I mean, come on, right? I didn't see that coming. I was excited for it. I know there's been a lot of talks that a Konami-based Metal Gear Solid 3 remake was officially happening, and it is. They also announced that they're doing some sort of collection, which, as far as I could tell, is just a straight-up port. I don't think there's anything exciting there about that, but I'm very excited for Metal Gear Solid 3, and I hope that it lives up to when it's remastered. I hope that they've done a good job, you know, kind of bringing that over, because I know that's one of the most like revered Metal Gear Solid games, and it was during a period of my life when I didn't play it. I've always regretted it. I've always thought about going back and playing it, but I just can't get into those graphics and that game style anymore. So the fact that they're remaking it, it's going to have nice, pretty new graphics. It's going to take advantage of all of the new PlayStation 5 feature sets. I will gladly wait my turn. More Final Fantasy 16. I don't know how much more I feel like I don't need to play Final Fantasy 16. I feel like I've played the game so much. I was a little disappointed, actually. They showed yet another trailer. I was hoping they would take that time and apply it to something else. Did see Alan Wake 2. That was actually really, really exciting. Particularly because Mad Max was in it. It's definitely Mad Max. I mean, don't tell me. I'm sorry, Mad Max. Max Payne is in I'm going to say Mad Max. Max Payne. You remember the original Max Payne? You had the guy with that smirk, right? Now, they did change his character model in Max Payne 3. He went bald. He got a little crazier, got a little puffier. But in the first one, he had that really kind of weird CGI grin where he's always like this. And his face never moved. You remember, he took a lot of dope. And that was his health potions. He would take pills and then the bullet time and everything. That dude legit is in Alan Wake, which I'm really, really excited for. So curious to see what's going to happen. It could just be like a fun little cameo. I know Remedy Games has said that those games are in the same universe. We've seen that time and time again. It was just funny to see the two characters existing in the same trailer. So I'm really excited to see where that goes. We did get to see Assassin's Creed Mirage. It's going to feature Basim again. I don't know. I think I'm over Assassin's Creed. I know I keep saying this, and then I hesitantly buy it. I beat the main game. I never buy the DLC, or I get it in a collector's edition because I want the statue, even though I say I'm never going to buy it again. It didn't look that exciting. It looked very phoned in. It looked like the greatest hits of an Assassin's Creed game. And there are so many other great games out there right now that I just don't feel like in my life, with the backlog of games that I have, with the fun games that are coming out, I just don't feel like I want to spend 80 or 90 hours in an Assassin's Creed game, especially when it's like, oh, wow, here we are once again in some sort of Middle Eastern city, and we're going to have some MacGuffin you got to chase. And yes, it's going to promote the story of kind of what's been going on behind the scenes and in the present day line with the Templars, and I don't know. I think it's a pass for me. I'm sure a lot of people are excited to see that. It looked okay. It didn't look great. There were definitely a lot of things in that game that looked janky, for lack of a better word. And it's just your traditional annual Ubisoft pooping the game out. So not exciting for me, but I'm sure a lot of people were really thrilled for that. The one that really kind of caught my guard, and this is at the very end of the presentation now, we got our little like Bungie segment. And I was like, oh yeah, PlayStation is kind of the owner of Bungie now, aren't they? And I was waiting to see what would they do. If you remember, Bungie had a list of things that they were going to work on. Yes, they were going to stay true to Destiny 2 and leave that out, but they were going to start working on these PlayStation exclusive experiences. They're going to take their rich history with the great polish of first-person shooters. And what did they announce? Marathon. I was like, okay. This was the game for the 90s, kind of like redone. It looks great. You will definitely watch this trailer and see vibes of Titanfall, and you will definitely see a lot of like art assets that were probably left over from like Destiny 1. We have these kind of like weird guns with bright letters, and almost kind of reminds me of the Destiny Racing League. If you remember that, when everybody had the race suits on, and it was supposed to be like this future retro looking type of racing experience. Those events that they kept having. I think they still do Destiny Racing League, actually. Sometimes it's like limited events. I think they call it like the Sparrow League or something. I don't know. I don't play Destiny 2 anymore. But this looks a lot like that. The art style, a very, very interesting aesthetic. I will give them that. It's definitely different than anything I've seen. It looks like it's going to be some sort of gauntlet-based shooter. Very similar to potentially what they did in the first Marathon. Obviously, reusing that name for a reason. The interesting thing is that it's actually going to come out for everything, and it's going to have full crossplay. There's a lot of news on it now, actually, on their website, so you can go actually read and check it all out. And I was like, oh, so is this the big Destiny thing, or is this the big Bungie thing, like a crossplay game? Like, I kind of thought that Sony was going to get some kind of cool exclusive. Doesn't mean they won't in the future, but this wasn't it. Still excited to see Bungie doing something other than Destiny. Although we did get a Destiny trailer, a little tease of Cade. Apparently he's alive in some bizarro universe and he's going to come back to life. And I don't know. They need to end Destiny 2. I've been saying this for a while. It's got to end. It really does have to end. I know this last DLC that comes out is the end of DLC. And then they'll move on to something else. Maybe Destiny 3 or maybe some other new experience that they haven't yet offered. I don't feel like Marathon is going to be that big game that keeps people driving towards years and years the way that Destiny does. So they clearly have something else up their sleeves. Don't know what it is quite yet. Sony ended on a couple VR announcements that didn't really impress me so much and make me want to get VR. Looks like they're dabbling in the new Q handheld, which I'll do a separate video about. They're also talking about some new headphones, which I will do a separate video about. And then they ended with the big Spider-Man 2 announcement showing off symbiote Spider-Man. He is now Venom, but not Venom. It looks cool. You're going to be able to toggle between both Peter Parker and Miles Morales. And it looks amazing. The gameplay looks great. And it's coming out later this year. So I think they ended it on a high note. Major disappointment as I wrap up. No news on factions. I was really surprised. I really thought we were going to get The Last of Us factions. Doesn't mean they won't show something later in the year. Doesn't mean it still might not come out later in the year. This was a pretty dense showcase. They definitely threw some bones to some of their indie friends. They definitely had some stuff in there that I didn't really necessarily feel was worthy of the spotlight. So it doesn't mean that they won't do some other kind of showcase later on in the year. But this definitely kind of gears you out for the rest of the year. Spider-Man's going to be the big tentpole games. We kind of thought. We had a couple of their zingers that are going to be sprinkled in there for the year. And we'll have to see where it goes. Overall, like I said, wasn't the best, wasn't the worst. I'd give it maybe like somewhere in the B range, maybe like a low B in terms of score. I'm just happy, though, as like I said, as a Sony fan. Always puts a smile on my face when they put their best foot forward. Don't think they quite pulled that off today, but it definitely rallies the base of us Sony ponies for more great stuff. So those are my knee-jerk reactions on the PlayStation Showcase 2023. I want to hear from you guys in the comments below. What did you love? What did you hate? What did you think? Are they in a good place? Did they set themselves up for success? And now, when keeping just watching this, kind of put this in your back pocket and hold on to it. Think when you watch the Xbox Showcase. It's pretty clear that Microsoft and Sony aren't really competitors anymore. At least Microsoft is kind of intentionally bowed out of that race because they're getting their asses kicked. But when you kind of compare these two and you always want to have that pride and be like, oh, Sony beat Xbox or oh, Xbox beat Sony. I want to hear from you guys. What do you think Microsoft's thinking about all this? I think they probably looked around and said, well, We're probably going to get our asses kicked, but not as bad as we thought. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.